morning sky over the quiet neighborhood was pale gray, like the day wasn't ready to start yet. In the Statham family's small house, the only sound was the floorboards creaking as 13-year-old Ethan walked quietly through the hallway. He didn't wake anyone. He almost never did. Even now, as he put on his backpack and opened the front door to the cold morning, his footsteps were almost silent. At school, Ethan liked to stay quiet and in the corners. He was the kind of boy teachers usually forgot after class, unless they were calling the roll. He sat in the second-to-last row, close enough to see the board clearly, but far enough so nobody would call on him. He didn't cause trouble. He didn't raise his hand unless he had to. He wasn't the fastest runner, the highest scorer, or the loudest speaker, and he liked it that way. He had a few people he talked to sometimes. They were not really friends, just classmates who occasionally passed him notes or asked for help with math. They didn't eat lunch together. They didn't play after school. Nobody really knew much about him. And that was fine with Ethan. Less attention meant more peace. The gym was filled with normal morning sounds. Sneakers squeaked on the shiny floor. Students chatted quietly. The coach, Coach Marcus, barked at someone to tuck in their shirt. Marcus was new at the school, but everyone already knew what to expect. He was young, strong, and walked like he wanted everyone to remember he used to be an athlete. He called the students rookies, and sometimes talked about himself in the third person. Marcus didn't like excuses. That morning, he clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, rookies," he said. "Today we're going to do something different. Before drills, I want to know who inspires you. Who are your sports heroes? Who makes you want to run faster, jump higher, and try harder? Let's hear it." A soft wave of murmurs went through the gym. Some students grinned with excitement. "Messi," shouted one boy. "LeBron." "Serena Williams." "Kobe," other voices called out. Names flew across the room, and some students cheered. Marcus smiled. "Now we're talking. Who else?" Ethan stayed still in the crowd, hoping nobody would call him. But luck was not on his side. "Ethan." Marcus called suddenly. "You look like you're keeping a secret. Tell us. Who's your sports hero?" Ethan shook his head a little and whispered, "I'd rather not." "What was that? Speak up." There was a short silence. Then a girl sitting next to him, Samantha, who once traded pencils with him in math class, spoke up with a small smile. "He told me his grandpa was some kind of champion, like he won hundreds of matches or something." The word grandpa hung in the air like a balloon ready to pop. Laughter started to bubble. Not full laughter yet, but it was coming. Marcus raised his eyebrow. "Is that so, Ethan? Let's hear it then. Don't be shy." Ethan hesitated. All eyes were on him now. He swallowed and spoke quietly, but clearly. "My grandfather. He won 245 boxing matches. Never lost. Never knocked anyone out." For a moment, nobody said anything. Then laughter started. First a small giggle, then it spread like fire through the gym. 245? What was he boxing, pillows? Someone snorted. Marcus smiled, eyes twinkling. "Wow, that's quite a bedtime story. Hollywood could make a movie about that." "Oh wait, they probably did." More laughter. Ethan's ears burned. "You sure you're not mixing up PlayStation stats with real life?" Someone joked. Marcus walked slowly around him, like a lion circling a mouse. "Oh no, this is good," he said. He picked up a marker and drew a stick figure with spiky hair, labeled Grandpa. He wrote 245 above it, and drew arrows pointing to pretend opponents, each marked KO'd by invisible punches. The class laughed even harder. A boy clapped Ethan on the back, teasing. "Tell us more stories, champ." Marcus turned back to Ethan. "Come on, let's see those moves. Show us the old invisible uppercut." Ethan froze. It wasn't that he was afraid. It was the heavy silence of being watched by everyone at once. Marcus made mock punches in the air. "Look at that footwork. Lightning fast. Boom. Down goes the imaginary man." The students made fake grunting sounds. Ethan felt something twist in his chest, like a rope being pulled tighter. The whistle blew, ending the teasing. Marcus clapped. "All right, enough fun. Let's move." but the laughter and teasing left a mark. In the locker room, Ethan changed quietly. Laughter still floated in the hall, boys repeating 245 as if it were a joke. His hands shook as he tied his shoes. He didn't cry. He didn't talk. He just sat for a little while after everyone left, staring at the floor, his fingers clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. He walked home slowly. The neighborhood was quiet, just like he liked. But today, silence felt different. Dinner was meatloaf and carrots. His mother asked about school. It was fine, he said. His grandfather, Jason, sat across from him. The old man's eyes were clear and sharp, though he was getting older. He said little, but when he looked at Ethan, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe worry, maybe understanding. Ethan didn't look at him. He ate silently and went upstairs. In his room, he opened a drawer where he kept special things. Comic books, a baseball card, and a pair of worn boxing gloves his grandfather had given him last year. They still smelled faintly of leather, and something older, like memory. He didn't touch them. He just stared. Then he lay back, staring at the ceiling until he fell asleep, slow and heavy. Somewhere in his mind, he heard laughter and his own voice. Small. True. He never lost. Not once. The next morning, he woke up before dawn. The world outside was gray. He moved through the house quietly. But something inside had changed. Not a rebellion, not a plan, just a tight knot in his chest. His grandfather sipped black coffee at the kitchen table, eyes narrowing slightly as he watched Ethan leave the house, quieter than ever. After the gym incident, Ethan kept his head down in class. He answered questions with nods or one-word answers. But the air around him felt heavier. Laughter followed him, but it was sharper now, filled with smirks and sideways looks. By lunch the next day, a paper was taped to his locker. It showed a stick figure with huge boxing gloves and the words, "Grandpa the Great Conqueror of Clouds." Ethan stared, then folded it up and put it in his backpack. He didn't throw it away. In the cafeteria, he sat by the window where he could watch the trees sway. Colin and Ray, two boys he sometimes talked to, were already eating. Colin nodded at him and went back to his pizza. Ray didn't look. Ethan picked at his food quietly. He didn't expect anyone to notice him. But today, it felt heavier than usual. After a while, Ray asked, "Hey, did you bring those gloves today?" Colin laughed. Careful, he might use the shadow punch. Ethan didn't answer. He looked at his chocolate milk. Ray Jason led. "Don't want to get knocked out by air." They laughed and went back to eating. Ethan took a bite of his sandwich, dried it in his mouth, and drank water. By the end of the day, 4 more copies of the drawing appeared, on his chair, locker, math book, and bathroom mirror. The last one said, "Coach Marcus approved." Ethan didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just carried it all quietly with him, a little tighter, a little heavier, but still moving through the day silently, like he always had. The classroom had started joining in on the joke. Not loud like bullies sometimes are, but quietly, in a way that made it feel like everyone was just following what others were doing. A whisper here, a little smirk there. Sometimes someone made a silly boxing pose when Ethan walked by. Even some teachers noticed, but they didn't ask what was happening. A few of them smiled awkwardly, not really sure what was funny, but they joined in a little bit. Coach Marcus kept the jokes going. Sometimes he laughed during warm-ups. Sometimes he pretended to punch the air. "Come on, Statham. Show me your grandpa's power. Give me your 246th win." Then the class laughed. Always laughter. Ethan felt everything. Not like he wasn't paying attention. He was, but he didn't fight back. He didn't speak up. Every joke, every laugh, felt like a tiny nail being hammered into his chest. He stopped eating lunch with other kids. He packed his own lunch and found a quiet place under the old stairwell behind Building C. A few leaves would gather there, and the stone wall stayed cool, even when it was hot outside. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. No one came to bother him there. His old friends started staying away. Colin still said hello sometimes, but Ray began making fun of him when others were around. The rest of the kids acted like he wasn't even there, like he was just furniture in the classroom. After the first week, someone made a silly Instagram account called Legendary SH Grandpa Fights. It had funny pictures of an old man in boxing gloves flying through space, punching asteroids and clouds. One post even said, "Fight 188-1 against Godzilla's shadow." Lots of kids started following it. Sometimes, when students in the hallway were looking at their phones, they would laugh and glance at Ethan. He didn't even need to see the phone to know what they were laughing at. Teachers noticed that Ethan was quiet, but they thought it was just normal teenage moodiness. One day, his homeroom teacher asked, "Everything is okay at home, Ethan?" He said, "Yes, ma'am." She nodded and didn't ask again. People wanted problems that looked big, like crying or yelling. Silence made everyone uncomfortable because it made them feel like they had to do something. At home, Ethan said little. He still ate meals with his mom and grandfather. He still did his homework, made his bed, and brushed his teeth. On the outside, nothing seemed different. But inside, everything felt different. He avoided looking his grandfather in the eyes. Not because he was ashamed, but because he didn't know how to explain what was happening. How could he explain that he believed in someone, but now everyone laughed at him for it? How could he tell the person who had always made him feel strong that he was now a joke? Jason, his grandfather, was not the kind of man to ask questions in a hurry. He watched and noticed things quietly. He had patience like someone who had seen too much to think every small feeling was urgent. But he noticed anyway. One night, while they were clearing dishes after dinner, Jason said, "You've been quiet lately." Ethan didn't look up. "Just tired. Long week," he said. Jason nodded and stacked the dishes. "You want to hit the punching bag tomorrow?" Ethan shook his head. "Got homework." Jason didn't push him. He just wiped his hands on a towel and nodded. "All right." Later in his room, Ethan opened his drawer and looked at his boxing gloves. They were still there. He picked one up. The leather was soft and smooth, but the stitches were fine. He put his hand inside. It still fit perfectly. He threw one punch into the air, then another, then a third. Then he put the gloves back and closed the drawer. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, which looked like a blank canvas. For a moment, he imagined what it would have been like if someone had believed him. If the class had stopped laughing and asked questions instead. If Coach Marcus had been curious instead of making fun. If just one person had said, "That's amazing." He held that thought for a heartbeat, then let it go. The next morning, someone had written on the sidewalk with chalk, "Grandpa strikes again. Clouds flee in terror." Ethan stepped over it without looking too closely. By now, the joke had grown. Students made fake stats and posters. One said, "Grandpa Statham, 200 wins, undefeated versus Fog." Another had a silly sports card with his grandfather's face on a wrestler's body. Some were clever, even funny, but they were about him. Still, Ethan stayed quiet. At the next gym class, Marcus started a new boxing lesson. He asked Ethan to show a demonstration, smirking. "Come on, champ. Show us what you got." Ethan said no at first, but Marcus insisted. So he went forward. He moved slowly and carefully, just following instructions. The coach laughed. "Impressive. I think the air is getting scared already." The class laughed too. Ethan just stood there. He felt like a stone in the rain, soaking it all in. When class ended, he walked slowly to the locker room. He changed in silence and sat on the bench while the other kids left. His reflection in the metal locker looked strange and stretched. He didn't recognize himself. He went home, greeted his mom, did his homework, and went to his room. That night, Jason noticed the door didn't close all the way. It was slightly open. He walked past it and peeked in. Ethan was sitting on the bed, still dressed, staring at his gloves. Jason didn't go in. He just stood there for a moment, then walked away. He felt that something was wrong. But he didn't know how wrong it really was. Not yet. Jason had always been a quiet man. He didn't rush to fix things with words that didn't help. He waited and watched. This had worked for years, in the boxing ring and in life, but not this time. The silence in Ethan's eyes grew heavier every day. At first, Jason thought it was just a phase. He had been 13 once too. He remembered that age, awkward, unsure, sometimes sad, fighting invisible shadows no one else could see. He gave Ethan space. But the silence changed. It stopped being peaceful and thoughtful. It became heavy. It was a hush that spoke without sound. Ethan's answers at dinner got shorter. Fine, yeah, I don't know. His laughter disappeared. He stopped wandering into Jason's workshop to talk or watch him work with tools. There were no tantrums, no yelling, just a boy slowly folding inward, like a book closing one page at a time. One Saturday morning, Jason made a quiet decision. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his usual mug of black coffee, steam curling up into the soft morning light. Ethan had already left, he said, for a study session at the library. The school website welcomed him with a clean, neat page. It had all the usual stuff, the lunch menu, announcements from the principal, and a list of upcoming events. It looked shiny and organized, but it felt a little boring. He clicked through the pages for his classes, checking the names of the teachers. Finally, he found the athletics page. There, mixed in with updates about the basketball team and some blurry pictures of kids running track, was a video link. The link said, Coach Marcus Friday warm-up. Funny video. The little picture that went with it showed a blurry gym floor. Some kids were laughing, and one looked like he was standing still, serious. He clicked it. The video started in the middle of the action. Coach Marcus was in the center of the gym, moving his arms around in big, silly punches. A group of kids was laughing and jumping, enjoying the show. Jason could hear a voice in the background. It sounded like Ethan's, faint and quiet, at the edge of the sound. The camera wobbled a little as it moved, showing Ethan standing alone, his arms down by his sides, his face serious and not smiling at all. Coach Marcus' voice was loud and full of energy. Here he is, everyone. The legend's grandson. Watch out. You're in the presence of greatness. More laughter followed. Jason felt his jaw tighten. He didn't move. Marcus didn't stop. Come on, Ethan. Don't hold back. Show us the deadly cloud punching technique passed down through generations. Ethan didn't move. He just stood there, breathing slowly. Marcus laughed even harder. Legend says his grandpa once knocked out a tornado just by looking at it. The kids around him laughed so much that some of them fell on the floor, clutching their stomachs like it hurt from laughing too hard. One boy in the back yelled, "Teach us, master." Ethan's face on the video was blurry and hard to read. But to Jason, it was very clear. Ethan wasn't calm. He wasn't scared. He was holding back something very strong. He was full of control, just like Jason himself had been in locker rooms after fights he didn't want, staring into mirrors and staying quiet. The clip ended with Marcus' final joke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Storm Slayer." Jason closed the tablet. He sat quietly for a full minute, staring at the grain of the table under his fingers. Then he reached into the drawer next to him and grabbed a small keyring. He walked down the hall to the closet and unlocked an old wooden chest hidden under a folded canvas tarp. Dust floated up as he lifted the lid. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, curled photographs, and old programs. They were pieces of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, but it didn't. It was his life. He carefully sorted through the chest. He found a laminated printout from Ring magazine showing the top 50 pound-for-pound fighters from 30 years ago. His name was in bold letters. A black and white photograph showed him standing next to a former world champion. His hands were taped, his face young but proud. There were dozens of ticket stubs, each with a date and the name of the opponent he had faced. There was a notebook with the names of every fighter he had ever fought, 245 of them. Each one was checked off neatly. Near the bottom of the chest, wrapped in a red silk handkerchief, was a certificate from the Boxing Hall of Fame. Jason unfolded it slowly. The paper was still crisp, and the gold seal was perfect. At the top, in fancy letters, it read, "In honor of Charles Jason Statham, for excellence, integrity, and an undefeated career." He smiled softly. He had never cared much for trophies. He preferred peace to applause. But this one mattered. It wasn't for the world. It wasn't for people's praise. It was for the boy who now sat in his room every night, feeling the weight of other people's disbelief. Jason spent the next day organizing everything. He placed the clippings and photos in clear sleeves and arranged them carefully in a matte black case. He added a new sheet he printed that morning, a certified letter from the Hall of Fame confirming that every record was real and true. He closed the case and placed it carefully on the workbench. Later at dinner, Ethan poked at his food without saying much. "Got anything coming up at school this week?" Jason asked gently. Ethan shrugged. "Any games, presentations?" Ethan paused, thinking. "There's this sports show, a thing on Friday. Coach is doing something with the classes. Parents might come." Jason didn't say anything. He just nodded. "Are you going?" Ethan asked after a moment, still not looking up. "Maybe," Jason answered, sipping his water. Silence fell again. That night, as the house grew dark and the wind rustled softly through the trees, Jason sat in his study alone. He opened a notebook and wrote down names and times, one after another. He wasn't calling anyone for help. He was just letting them know. One was a call to the Hall of Fame for a second copy of the certificate. Another was a call to a local journalist he knew from long ago. On Thursday evening, Jason set his alarm for 6 a.m. He laid out a clean shirt, polished his boots, and ironed his slacks with the care he used to put into weigh-ins before big fights. Then he picked up the case and placed it by the door. When Ethan walked through the kitchen that night on his way upstairs, he paused when he saw it. "What's that?" he asked. Jason didn't look up from his coffee. "Just something I might bring along tomorrow." Ethan didn't ask anything else. He nodded and kept walking. Jason watched him go, then leaned back in his chair. The wind outside had grown a little stronger, making the leaves swirl and dance. He closed his eyes, listening to the soft whispers of the wind against the glass. The next morning, before the sun had even fully risen, Jason dressed carefully. He checked the case one last time. Everything was perfect. He left the house without saying a word. The boy would already be at school, facing laughter and jokes he hadn't asked for. But Jason wasn't coming to fight anyone. He was coming to show the truth. And truth didn't need to shout. It only needed to be seen. The gym was bright and noisy. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling, fluttering slightly in the air. The polished wooden floor shone under the bright lights. The smell of popcorn mixed with the smell of freshly waxed floors. The school had opened its doors beyond regular hours for a special event, the sports show. Families, teachers, and students filled the bleachers. Parents in coats and scarves held steaming cups of coffee. They talked excitedly about the basketball season and the new football coach. The students moved around with energy only teenagers can have, whispering and giggling, full of excitement and nerves. Coach Marcus stood in the middle of the gym with a microphone. He looked very confident. His usual smile was bigger, and his swagger seemed stronger because everyone was watching. The whole evening was like a show, and he was the star. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice loud over the noise. "Welcome to the annual Southview Sports Show. Tonight we celebrate talent, dedication, and of course a little fun. And what better way to start than with a very special demonstration from none other than Ethan Statham, grandson of the legendary Jason Statham." The crowd laughed a little. Ethan stood at the side of the court. His sports shirt was a little wrinkled. His hands were loosely clenched at his sides. His heart beat fast and unevenly, his mind racing, even though he looked calm on the outside. The spotlight shone on him, making every detail visible: his pale skin, the shadows under his eyes, the tightness of his jaw. Coach Marcus looked at him with playful eyes. "Now Ethan will show us a few moves, a little taste of what greatness looks like, right? After all, he's got big shoes to fill." The crowd Jason led. Some parents looked a little worried. Ethan's eyes stayed on the floor. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "I'm ready." Marcus nodded and signaled for the music to start. A fast, upbeat rock song filled the gym, pounding with energy and excitement. Ethan stepped forward, holding his fists up like he had learned in boxing class. He moved carefully. Every punch he threw was slow and measured. He did not seem excited or happy, but he tried his best. The coach, Mr. Marcus, acted like he was going to fight back. But instead, he pretended to fall down after every punch Ethan threw. The audience, who were other students, laughed loudly. Then Marcus did something even sillier. He posed like he was fighting an invisible person. "Watch out for the shadow punch," he shouted. The students laughed even more. Some cheered, and a few clapped, but it was all making fun of Ethan. Ethan's face turned red. He tried to smile a little, but he didn't look at anyone. He felt embarrassed. Suddenly, the gym door swung open. The noise in the room got smaller for a moment. Everyone looked at the door. A tall man walked in. He was older and stood very straight. His jacket was dark and buttoned neatly. In one hand, he carried a black leather case. His eyes were sharp, and he looked around the room with quiet confidence. It was Jason Statham. The whole room became very quiet. Even the music seemed to fade away. Everyone felt a serious energy in the air. Jason walked slowly toward the front of the gym. His footsteps made soft sounds on the wooden floor, but they seemed important, almost like they echoed. The microphone was quiet. The spotlight seemed to follow him. Jason walked up to the teacher's desk. Marcus was still smiling and laughing, but he didn't notice how the room had changed. Jason put the black case on the desk very carefully and opened it. Inside, there were neat piles of papers. There was an official Hall of Fame plaque, old photographs of his victories, yellowed newspaper clippings about his fights, and a long list with the names of all 245 people he had beaten. The room became even quieter. Jason turned slowly to look at the crowd. His eyes were locked on Marcus. He looked serious, like he was giving a challenge without saying a word. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, but it was full of power. "I'm not here to tell stories," he said. "I'm just an old man who came to see how respect is taught here." The words hit the room like a lightning bolt. Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but he closed it. His smile disappeared. He looked small and unsure. The students stopped laughing. Their whispers were soft and nervous. They weren't sure what to do. Jason reached out and put a firm hand on Ethan's shoulder. Ethan lifted his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he didn't look away. He felt proud, not a bragging kind of pride, but the kind where someone truly sees you for who you are. Without saying another word, Jason picked up his black case and walked out. Ethan followed him. Their steps were calm and steady. The gym stayed completely silent after they left. The echo of Jason's words stayed in the room, reminding everyone of the importance of respect and honor. Outside, the cool evening air surrounded them. Everything felt different. Ethan felt the weight in his chest become lighter. A quiet, steady feeling of confidence took its place. The story that had been a joke before now felt real. And it was his. The next morning at Southview Middle School, things were different. The halls no longer rang with teasing laughter when Ethan walked by. Instead, students gave him small nods, short hellos, and curious looks that lasted a little longer than before. Everyone was talking quietly about what had happened the night before, about Jason Statham visiting and showing respect to Ethan. In the cafeteria, Ethan noticed the change right away. The empty seat beside him wasn't empty anymore. Some students came over and smiled at him. They were careful at first, not mocking him anymore. They asked him questions about his grandfather, the boxing matches, the photographs, and the awards Jason had shown. Ethan didn't feel embarrassed or hurt this time. He told them stories quietly and explained little details about his life. Ethan didn't feel proud in a showy way. He stayed calm. He knew that the truth was strong on its own. It didn't need to be shouted or boasted about. The day passed quickly. At the end of gym class, something special happened. Mr. Griffin, a tall man who was filling in for Coach Marcus, called Ethan over. "Let's see what you've got, Ethan," he said simply. He didn't laugh or make fun. Ethan walked to the center of the gym. He lifted his fists and started practicing. He threw a few jabs. His movements were smooth and confident. He didn't need to show off or get applause. He just showed the skill he had been working on in quiet practice. The class watched in silence. Mr. Griffin nodded. "Good. Really good," he said. Ethan felt something new, a feeling of belonging. He felt like he was part of the class, not the person everyone made fun of. After school, the halls felt different. Teachers whispered about Jason Statham visiting, and students talked about Ethan's grandfather and the story they had seen. Even Coach Marcus' sudden absence made people curious, but no one talked about it openly. Ethan walked home feeling lighter. The sun was going down, and shadows stretched across the streets. When he got home, Jason was waiting on the front porch. He sat in a wooden rocking chair. He had a cup of hot tea in his hand. His face was calm and unreadable. Ethan walked up and sat down next to him. For a long time, neither of them said a word. The only sounds were the soft creak of the chair and the rustling leaves in the evening breeze. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Thank you for coming," he said. Jason smiled. His eyes crinkled a little at the corners. "Thank you for not giving up," he said. They sat together quietly, 2 generations connected. They understood each other without saying much. They shared a bond made from patience, hard work, and courage. The kind of courage that comes when you stand tall even when the world seems to expect you to fail. The night went on peacefully. Ethan looked at the stars, feeling calm and strong. He knew that his journey had just begun. From being invisible and laughed at, he had grown into someone who could face the world with quiet pride and confidence. And he knew deep down that this was only the start of something wonderful. Wow, what a journey! I'd love to hear what you thought. Drop your reactions in the comments below. If this adventure left you smiling, inspired, or just itching for more, make sure to hit subscribe and tap that bell so you never miss the next story. Thanks for coming along on this ride. And remember, stay curious, stay brave, and keep exploring the world around you. Your next adventure is just around the corner.